Having a great day. Welcome to this talk, and as the title of the talk says, it is No More 996. So, on this note, we'll be talking about recognizing and overcoming burnout in Asia. And I hope that by the end of today, you would have an actionable framework as well as inspiration on how to better tackle burnout in your organization. A quick introduction of myself. My name is Sarah, and I'm from Stories of Asia, a storyteller incubator founded in Singapore. We help individuals and employers tell their stories to unlock their full potential. And now, allow me to introduce our guest, Puneet Narang. Puneet is the managing director of Diageo Indonesia and is a member of the Diageo Asia Pacific leadership team. He is responsible for managing Diageo's business in Indonesia. Now, prior to joining Diageo, Puneet spent over 25 years in senior leadership and management roles in various multinational companies such as Reckitt, Mondelez, Pfizer, and GSK. Puneet has lived and worked in the UK, Ireland, Australia, India, Turkey, and Singapore before finding his current home in Indonesia. He has also successfully managed complex businesses in both developed and emerging markets, driving growth and market share. He has a vast experience in managing large teams and is a big supporter of inclusion and diversity. And today we'll be tapping into his expertise when it comes to dealing with burnout. Now, I believe the best way to start this conversation would be to set the tone for the rest of the conversation by talking about the definition of burnout. So first, I would love to ask Puneet, what is your definition of burnout? Because it can differ from person to person depending on their experience.
Yeah, first of all, hi Sarah, and good morning, good afternoon to all the audience who have joined. So, my definition of burnout. Sarah, everyone goes through stress at the workplace. There are times when people feel disengaged from work. It could be a bad day at work, it could be a project you're not enjoying. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of echo. Can we go on mute on the other end? There's a lot of echo
Yes,
coming.
it appears we're facing some audio
Yeah,
difficulties. Yep,
that's
it's
great.
resolved now. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much. So what I was saying was, everyone goes through stress, which is very common in the workplace. It could be a difficult project you're working on, could be a difficult timeline, could be long working hours. So it's quite normal to feel less engaged at times, right? But when there's, workplace stress, it becomes chronic. When it depletes you of your energy, there is negativity, there is cynicism towards your job. That to me is a definition of burnout. And it results in the employee getting disengaged from the job. Uh, you may not be able to get new ideas. You may not want to come to work, and the work seems like a burden. So that, for me, is a definition of burnout. But I guess it varies from people to people. What about you, Sarah? What's your definition?
Thanks for asking, Puneet. For me, my definition of burnout as a creative, mostly, it's when I don't have any more creative juice, where I feel that I could spend hours on a project, really just trying to focus, really trying to get in the zone, and I'm not able to. And I also see some of the similar symptoms you described, which is feeling a lack of motivation, feeling a lack feeling cynicism. Those are things that are highly relatable. Um, I am also having a look at the question and answer sheet, like while we're talking, and I'd just like to encourage the audience to drop their questions into the question box because we will be taking them at the end of this call, right? At the end of this session. But in the meantime, let's continue on with the conversation. So, Puneet, I think you raised some really, really good points in terms of burnout and how it is chronic. And I'd love to ask you, what do you think is the difference between stress and burnout? Like, what is the main difference between those two?
So that's a great question, Sarah, because a lot of people confuse stress and burnout, and they are similar but yet very different. Um, like I said earlier, in the workplace, stress is part of our work life, and stress, the nervous energy, at times is a good thing because that's what really charges you for a better performance at work. So, as an example, if you have, let's say, a presentation on a Monday morning, someone could be working all weekend, could be very stressful, but you do a good presentation, you get some appreciation, maybe you get the outcome, what you wanted from a presentation, and it energizes you. Right? Whereas when you look at burnout, that's totally different, as I explained earlier, right? I'm reminded of quote from Novak Djokovic, who said, "Without pressure, there is no professional sport." So if you want to be at the top of your game, you got to learn to deal with pressure. And I guess the same applies to workplace. Pressure and stress are part of our current day, work life. And I would give an analogy. It's like a headache versus a migraine. We all have headaches from time to time, but when those headaches become chronic and become a migraine, that is what would be my analogy of what a burnout is, to a headache, which is more like a stress.
That is brilliant. I love that. That's a very visual example between stress and burnout, a headache versus a migraine. Thanks for sharing that, Puneet. So now we've kind of talked about like recognizing burnout, right? We will be talking about overcoming burnout real soon. But before that, let's talk a little bit more about burnout in the context of Asia, right? Puneet, would you have any stories or examples to share when it comes to burnout in Asia?
So a few things, Sarah. I think first of all, burnout is in all the countries, right? The degree might vary. So it's a worldwide phenomena across all continents. I was looking at a study done by someone recently, where they had researched in 69 cities across 53 countries, and in the top 10 cities where we had the highest burnout, no surprise, seven were from Asia, with Tokyo being at the top of the list. So burnout in Asia is a real problem, and a lot of things are common to the other continents, as we have seen, but there are something specifics which I've seen in Asia. And again, just a disclaimer, what I'm talking about is Asia in general. This is not about the company I represent, because Diageo does not either encourage or condone such behavior. So you know we talked, or the topic is 996, right? So for people who are not fully aware of this concept of 996, this is working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m, 6 days a week. Now that's 72 hours of work life in a week, compared to usually a 38 or a 48 hours, which many countries in the West would be having. So this 996 work culture, which has become uh, prevalent in some countries in Asia, is one big reason for burnout. So this puts a lot of load on the employees. There is long time being spent. There's excessive workload, and I think that just magnifies and leads to burnout. Um, the other thing also, the reason in Asia, I would say specifically, is uh, Asia, there is I would say, a bit more hierarchy in the organizations in Asia. Now, what that means is that the employees are not empowered enough, and the employees are not able to decide their own work time and work day, priorities. So I think it's uh, this, coupled with the 996, I think leads to a big burnout issue in Asia. Um, if I may say, another contributing factor is the lack of, or employees taking less vacation time. There is a feeling in the employees that taking vacation is something which is not considered good. It means you're not serious about your job, right? And in fact, all research has shown is on the contrary. Vacation actually recharges people, and it actually reduces burnout, right? So these are a few things which I've seen, which are, I would say, specific to Asia. But there are quite a few other factors which are general, across the world, uh, and one of it also is lack of support from your manager. The manager knows if the employee is getting too overwhelmed. So is the manager supporting the employee enough? Is the manager reading the employees, early signs of burnout enough? Those are the factors which are very, very critical to manage, burnout. Right? Um, Anything you would like to add to this, Sarah?
I agree with everything you're saying, Puneet, and just thinking about my own personal experience here, because at Stories of Asia, we actually have unlimited leave. And thinking about Asian culture, it was very ingrained in me that after that policy was implemented, I was like, oh no, I don't think I can take so much leave. Am I going to end up taking less leave than needed? Right. So, like you said, the manager is crucial when it comes to managing the employees in terms of recognizing if they're burnt out or not. So, my boss was like saying that, remember, it's all about trust, right? There's no stigma here. You're not as long as, like, you don't take advantage of anything, there is like this trust going on between you and the company, and it's up to you to manage your own pace of work, right? So that has been like one of the most liberating things for me at Stories of Asia, having that. So I think a lot of the items that you said are very true, and thanks for sharing that, Puneet. I actually would love to talk a little bit more about COVID-19 and burnout in Asia, especially if you don't have any other points to add. Maybe you could share from your own experience, Puneet, what you've seen and how COVID-19 might have exacerbated burnout.
Yeah, okay. So I think before I come to COVID-19, a couple of other points which I would like to add, because burnout is not necessarily linked to your talent quality, right? In fact, what I've seen is many times it's the high performers who face a lot of burnout, but these are people who believe in perfection. They're giving 110% of themselves to their job, and when this happens over a long period of time, you know this can lead to burnout as well. So, you know, many times it's the high performers who also face, burnout. Uh, and I think one very important factor is not having fun. So all work and no fun is other part which is a big contributing factor of a burnout. Right? And as you rightly said, with COVID, the situation has further exacerbated because what COVID has done over the last 18 months now, there is a there is now lack of separation between our work and our personal lives. Many of us have been working remote, working virtually for a very, very long time, and that work has encroached into our personal space. There is no downtime between meetings, between work and office. There is no driving time. So, my own example, much that I hated Jakarta traffic, right, which would take me 45 minutes to 1 hour to and fro from work. But that also gave me this space to myself. I had this beautiful 45 minutes in the car where I could unwind from work. I could listen to music. I could listen to an audiobook while admiring the traffic around me, right? But it gave me that opportunity to unwind. And now what happens is I finish my work and I'm into my family, into my personal space. So there is no unwinding between work. So work is encroaching, into our personal space. In the physical world, when we were working pre-COVID, there are these coffee machine talks. You go out for lunch with your colleague, you miss all these things. So it's become now meeting after meeting on Zoom, and it's a big contributing factor of burnout, right? And as I was saying earlier, people haven't taken vacations because with the borders closed, people don't even know where to go. So people are trying to save their leave. In fact, we are encouraging people that it's good to take your breaks. If you can't go overseas, can't go to another city, go and have a staycation in a hotel. Unwind, recharge yourself is very critical. So, as I said earlier, burnout, which was a problem in the workforce earlier as well, with COVID, it's further been exacerbated.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Puneet. That's very well said. And I think all of us are feeling the brunt of this, especially with COVID-19 now. And the ways that we might have been able to deal with burnout without realizing it, whether it's those coffee chats at work or the water cooler chats, or even the commute time to and fro work. Those things I'm missing right now. I think this would be a great time to bring in some of the audience questions, actually. Because, Puneet, I was going to ask you about how you deal with burnout personally. And some of the audience questions are, how can we continue to work hard without risking burnout, from one participant? And another participant asks, how can I balance the well being of my staff with the need to get jobs done and workload completed? Puneet, do you have any advice to offer on this? Because a lot of people do feel that they need to complete the work, it's a non-negotiable. So how do they manage that?
Yeah, sure. So I think again, two great questions. So let me just divide it into two parts, right? So first thing is about how to avoid reaching a stage of burnout. Let me tackle maybe that question first, because all of us are going through stress. I mean, that's for sure. So let me talk about my example, and uh, it may be relevant. Some people might be able to see some things in that as well, and I hope I can help people with my own example. So for the last 18 months, I've been working remotely. I'm working virtually. I haven't been to the office space. So it's Zoom after meeting after meeting on Zoom for the past 18 months, and this does get mentally very, very exhausting, right? Like I said earlier, no commute to and fro from work, so no time to unwind as well. So I have experienced stress many times over the last 18 months. Right? Uh, I think I'm fortunate. My stress did not reach the stage of burnout, but I guess I've also been, two factors over there. One, I love my job, which I think is a big advantage, and second, I think I'm fairly disciplined in how I look after my mental and physical health. Okay. So during the COVID time, after the first couple of months, as I was observing that there is the stress levels are going out. Sorry, the stress levels are going up. There is no separation between my work and my personal space. I actually started looking for certain courses on mental wellness, and I came across a couple of courses on Coursera. I read a few things around it as well, and finally I designed my own framework to deal with my own stress levels, and I call this framework GEMS, GEMS. So it's an acronym which stands uh, for gratefulness, for exercise, meditation, and savoring. Right. So GEMS is my framework of dealing with stress. uh, I won't say I've been 100% successful in applying the framework to myself, but I would say I've been fairly successful. So let me just give a couple of more details about what this GEMS framework is. So G, like I said, stands for gratefulness, and that's about every day in the evening, writing down a couple of things that have happened during the day which you are truly grateful for. And I can promise you, even in a very difficult day that you have had, there are always certain things that gave you a smile that you felt good about, right? In fact, just yesterday I was sitting with my teenage daughter in the evening, watching TV, and she was sounding a bit upset, and I tried the gratefulness technique on my daughter, and I said, "Hey, I know you had a bad day. Did anything good happen today?" And she started thinking, and she came out with three brilliant things that had happened, and she actually realized that the day wasn't all that bad as what she was imagining. So there were three beautiful things that had happened in a day, and she was quite happy. So I did get her out of her mood. So I think it's a very, very powerful tool. It's a simple tool. Please apply. um, Exercise, I think that's very obvious. I think everyone knows that. I mean, I try and do about 30-45 minutes of exercise every day. It could be simple walking, cycling, running, swimming, anything which you guys enjoy doing. Give yourself that time of 30 minutes to 45 minutes every day. The third is meditation, which I must say I've not been all that successful. I do it a few times a month. I'd wanted to do it a bit more, but I think time comes in the way many times, which, by the way, is no excuse, but that's a fact of my life. So I think try meditation. It will, calm your mind. And the fourth, a simple yet a very difficult technique, which is savoring, and that is about living in the now. Savor the things that you're doing. We are often actually thinking about the next meeting, about the next objective, the next task, and we don't actually enjoy what we are doing. So start with something which is very, very simple. You know, if you're having a meal on your own, just savor on the food that you're having. Don't think about anything else. You're brushing your teeth. just think about that activity of brushing, and it just takes your mind away from work about the thoughts which are bothering you. So that's the technique which I've applied, and I would really offer to the audience to give it a try. Okay. So I'll just pause over there, Sarah. It's a long answer, but I hope that gives people, some uh, sort of a framework to deal with stress and avoiding burnout.
Absolutely. I love that, Puneet. And I love how candid you were with it, sharing that it is something that you're working on. And I think that's very relatable. And I love all the items you mentioned in your framework. And I think this is very encouraging to people, to try different things that they may not have thought of, right? Exercise is one of the common things, but what about meditation? What about savoring the activities in your life? These are all frameworks that you can apply in your life. And thank you so much for sharing that. We have about 10 more minutes before we move on to the extended Q&A session. So, Puneet, I'd love to actually ask you a little bit more in terms of your company, Diageo, right? So I'd love to find out what kind of steps you're taking to proactively tackle burnout in your organization.
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. I will. And I think I didn't answer the second question. So I think when I talk about what steps we are taking in Diageo, that might answer the second part of the question as well, which was about as you focus on employee wellness, what happens to my productivity and the work that has to be done, right? So let me start with what we are doing in Diageo, and I will uh, specifically touch on the point which someone had asked that question. Okay. So in Diageo, first of all, we right at the start of COVID, after the first couple of months, we took a conscious decision that that employee well-being is very, very important. And as we saw COVID was extending beyond anyone's imagination, we even realized that this is a very important factor, because if we don't have a healthy, workforce, the work will suffer. So it is about truly and authentically caring about our employees. And in this, I think the manager plays a very important role, because when we are working virtually, you're not connecting with people in a physical space. The manager who's more connecting one on one with the employees, I think they are the first gatekeepers who can understand whether the employees are feeling stressed, are they reaching towards the stage of burnout. And the manager can do a few things. If the employee is getting overwhelmed with the work that is happening, you can reprioritize the work for the employees. You can redistribute work amongst other team members that are there in the organization. But one very important factor also is, which the employees look for, is the manager actually offering their authentic appreciation of the work that the people are doing. Because many times when you are working long hours, which again, like I said, we don't really encourage, but if someone is, the appreciation that you give to the output, the work that has come out, also recharges the employees. Okay. Um, we have a helpline for our employees, so they can reach out, without any problem or any sort of. It's a confidential line. They can reach out. They can discuss their problems. Uh, we have encouraged employees to actually start putting some boundaries around their work. So when COVID started and we all suddenly went to working from home, we did not have the right guidelines to deal with it, and many organizations, face the same problem. But over a period of time, as we learned, we started putting guidelines and boundaries around the workspace. So we avoid meetings after 5 p.m. For example, we have for the last, I would say, what, 6 to 8 months, we have made Wednesday afternoon Zoom free. Right? And again, it's not that easy to implement these things, because half a day of a day without meetings is not easy to create. So for example, when we started the Zoom free Wednesday afternoons, what we found was that the meetings moved to a Tuesday or a Thursday, and those days became longer. So then we started talking to our employees to say that, can we relook at the meetings we are having? Can we reduce the number of meetings that we are having? Right? Can we reduce the number of attendees in the meetings? And it took us a while, but we got into the rhythm. And I I will say with confidence now, for the last many months now, Wednesday afternoon is very sacrosanct. We don't do a Zoom meeting on a Wednesday afternoon, and that's been a big sort of a relief for many employees. I mentioned earlier about the coffee machine talk, or a lunch with someone. Of course, we don't have it with our virtual way of working, but when we start our meetings, we would start with a simple check-in, having some small talk, talking to people, and not just getting into the workspace straight away. And again, that makes a very big difference. We also engaged with a wellness consultant. We had, again, sessions on Zoom, because that's the only way of connecting today. So we had Zoom sessions with our wellness consultant, who guided us through various things. We learned various ways of how to deal with stress, and we had a discussion amongst ourselves as well, which was very well received by the employees. And then we subscribed to an wellness app, and that was wonderful because it was a very simple app which encouraged us to execute what we had learned in these wellness seminars. Uh, Simple things like drinking enough water in the day, exercising, meditations, connecting with people, and we formed a WhatsApp group where we would post our own pictures and our achievement of the day, to have the social encouragement to get various people uh, to also follow what that app was saying. So a lot of things we have done. We have encouraged employees to take more vacations, and successfully we have actually even pushed some employees to take vacations, and we have seen people are getting recharged. Um, and then we know we're in the virtual space. We can't have lunches together. We can't do that. But what we do is, we would for important meetings, we would surprise our employees by sending a Starbucks home, or we would send them like a lunch pack home. And it's a very small gesture, but it brings a smile to the employees. It engages them. And we've done virtual drinks. uh, we have sent them surprise gifts. We have had town halls with live bands playing, where the employees are dancing over Zoom. So a lot of things we have done. Okay. um, but what we have also started doing now, and this I think is something which will sort of address that second part of the question which someone had asked, that how do you actually look after employee wellness and still get the work done. And that's, we have started a project recently, uh, on radical liberation. So this is about how do we simplify the work that we have. How do we take away the mundane task? How do we take away repetitive tasks? How do we maybe automate a few things? And I think that is something, you cannot distance these two things. You have to simplify the work for people if you really want them to finish the work in a particular time during the day. So that is, I think, equally important, how to liberate people from the work that they do as well, if you look out for their wellness.
Awesome. That was so packed with a great many insights, Puneet. Thank you so much for that. While you were talking, or actually just as you were about to talk, a couple of participant questions came in, and I think you answered pretty much all of them. I'm just going to read out the questions that they asked, so you can have a look as well. One of them asked, how can we bring structural change in organizations that are seeking to bring accountability to the line manager to change some of these behaviors that influence employees? While you did talk about reprioritizing tasks and delegating tasks, as well as appreciating people, I think those were some points you mentioned. I think you also talked about engaging people, like wellness consultants, subscribing to apps, setting lunch packs, doing virtual drinks. These are all really pertinent points that can help change some of these behaviors. Just wondering if you have anything else to add to this question, Puneet.
So I think you've covered it pretty well. You summarized, quite a few things. But I think it really starts with the mindset that, long working hours should not be mistaken with performance. I think, and that's very, very important. And in fact, there have been experiments done in a lot of Western countries, where they have tried to even move to a 4-day week, and they've actually seen people's productivity goes up. Right. So I'm not recommending that everyone moves to a 4-day week, but the point I'm making is that the work expands to the time you have as well. So in many organizations, the work culture becomes a 996. And then no wonder everyone is working long and hard. But it is not necessarily, don't confuse productivity or performance with long working hours. I think, and that requires a proper discussion at the leadership level in organizations, how to really put boundaries across workspace, because you want your employees to be mentally healthy, physically fit, and I can promise you the productivity and the performance will follow.
Absolutely. That makes me think maybe part of the reason why people feel like they need to, Asian cultures especially, feel like they need to equate longer working hours with success is maybe they don't see the outlet on how to share their success, so which is why some of the methods you shared are so effective, I would think, whether it's the management taking the step to acknowledge all the hard work they've put in and acknowledge that success, or whether it's creating channels in your internal communications so that people can share what was their win of the day, right, or what was the success they achieved, without feeling any guilt at that, right? So it seems like when you do these things, then people might feel a little bit more liberated. And I love that you say it's absolutely the mindset. That's where it all starts, because employees could do this, but it's up to the employers, up to the HR departments to pave the way by setting this mindset for everyone. Some of the other two questions that people asked are pretty similar. I'll just have I'll share it out and summarize Puneet's answers. Someone asked, individual ways of managing stress and burnout are part of the picture. How do you think organizations can take action to reduce the stress levels for staff and respond to prevent burnout? And the second question was individual ways. Um, Oh, it's pretty similar, actually. Very similar. What can organizations do to prevent stress or burnout, right? So I think what is especially interesting, and I would like to follow up with a question of my own to what they asked, is how do you draw these boundaries? Like, let's talk about the one where you did Zoom free Wednesdays, right? You mentioned in brief that it took a while to implement. It wasn't just you implemented once and then it was successful, right? So there are going to be challenges that pop up. So what advice do you have for corporate leaders and HR leaders when it comes to implementing these bold or new decisions and making sure that it goes from theory to practice?
I think it is you to lead by example. So as leaders, we have the responsibility. So often, it's the leaders who break the rule as well, right? So if you have made a Wednesday Zoom free, I refuse meetings on Wednesday afternoon, even if I know it's important, it's urgent, because if I don't do it, my team will also follow my bad lead, and they will also start accepting meetings on a Wednesday afternoon, right? Now, I'm by no way saying that this is it's a perfect utopia where we never will have any meeting on a Wednesday afternoon. But if we have had 95% success, that to me is pretty damn good, right? So I think it's leading by example. If you do set up the boundaries, give people the trust and the space to perform as well, then, right? And my belief is, when you trust your employees and you empower them, they will deliver.
That is very true, Puneet. Thanks so much for sharing that. Agreed completely. And it does start with us. It starts with the leaders to set that tone, to give that example, no matter how hard it can be. Now we're reaching the end of the session in about 5 minutes, so feel free to send any final questions that you might have before we end. And to Puneet, I'd love to ask you, are there any final learnings that you would like to share in terms of tackling burnout in Asia?
Yeah, so I think if there are no more questions, I think what I would just like to summarize by saying, uh, which I've said in the last half an hour. So just trying to give you a quick summary. I think first is this 996 culture is something which should not be condoned. I think we need to give employees more personal space. That's very, very important. Empower your employees. Focus on the end result and not on the long working hours, which many companies and countries are expecting employees to do. Uh, there's also a lot of discussion happening now on the future of workplace, right? And there is this concept of flexible working, and especially when we are dealing with the Gen Z and the millennials. I think they also demand more flexibility. So, what are organizations doing in terms of offering flexible working to their employees, whether it's a working hours, whether it's a hybrid, way of working? Uh, Stay connected with the employees. COVID has gone on for too long. We do not know how long this will still continue. Stay connected, even if we are connected in a virtual world. Make sure there is a strong connection with the employees. Right? Train your leaders, train your managers to look for signs of stress which can lead out to burnout. And it's always easy to arrest it at an early stage than at a later stage. Right? uh, Set some boundaries, some guidelines around the work and the personal space. Whatever fits your work culture, set that boundaries. Involve the employees while you work on these boundaries so they can actually be adhered to as well. Right? And last but not the least, encourage the employees to take vacations. I think the recharge that employees have is very, very critical, and it only ends up increasing productivity and performance.
That's very well said, Puneet. Thank you so much. I think everything you mentioned is super holistic and would really help organizations when it comes to dealing with burnout, right? We do have one more question from the audience as well, and we do have 4 more minutes left. So let's go ahead and take this question. They ask, how should one deal with employees who are personally going through a lot and prefer to be engaged with a lot of work? I'm pretty sure you might have encountered workaholics as well. So how do you deal with that when they're going through a lot, but they still prefer to be engaged in a lot of work?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I have come across quite a few people like that, and it's like I said earlier, it's the high performers who are giving that 110%, right? And they many of them actually end up getting burnt out as well. I think one thing to tell your employees is that a career is not a sprint; it's a marathon, right? So if you try and run too fast in the beginning, you will burn out and you will not be able to finish the marathon. And I think that is something, it's an important lesson for a lot of young employees who are giving their 110, 120, 150%. It's great, but you can't do it for forever, for a very long time. So have a session with them, give them that comfort that it's okay for them to work at 100%, even at 90%, because these are your high performers. And teach them how to let go. Many of them don't want to delegate their task and their activities. So really have a one-to-one with them, and give them that confidence that by letting go of certain things, by taking vacation, by not working 996, it's only going to help them in the long run and not come in the way of growing their careers.
Very well said. Thank you so much, Puneet. That makes a lot of sense, and that's great advice for someone who is in that situation. I'd like to follow up with one more question. Earlier in this talk, we talked about how we identify people who are facing burnout, right? Or what the definition of burnout is. So that involves people who are less motivated, they don't feel like coming to work, there's a sense of cynicism. For the corporate leaders here, for the managers here, how would they identify someone who is in the early stages of burnout? So they may not necessarily be as tired or as demotivated, but you somehow know that they're on the path there. How do they identify those things?
Yeah, I think for me there are two signs which I look for, and that is engagement and performance, because you normally would get a sense of in the meetings or in the work that you are seeing that the engagement level has gone down, or the quality of work is suffering. Right now, this may also be supported by by physical or emotional signs, but these are early signs, and I think I would encourage people to stay connected with their employees. Have more one-to-ones, whether directly as leaders or through your HR or through your line managers, but stay connected, and you will often pick up signs of stress much earlier, and act early, because if you act early you avoid the issue of burnout.
Exactly. And I think the fact that everybody's showing up here to this conference to learn from you and get all of these tips, it shows that you're already taking the first step to not just recognizing, but overcoming burnout in your organization. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And Puneet, thank you so much for your valuable insights and advice throughout this talk. I hope everyone here enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And I want to let you know that coming up next at 9 a.m. UK time, we'll be in conversation with Dr. Ellie Cannon, talking about analyzing the landscape of mental health at work. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and have a great day.